We have seen an increase in mortgage stress. We've seen an increase in people dealing with financial stresses that we've had to deal with. But on the other hand, we've also seen a lot more people working at home. That has meant that there has been a stronger focus on how do we deliver more livable neighbourhoods where people are actually able to access those key areas that they need if they're going to be working at home. And we're seeing that there is a significant gap in what's required and what councils' facilities actually have at the moment. So there is a gap and we need to address that. And as we all know, councils are not in a position to be able to fund all of this critical infrastructure if we're going to see these trends sustain into the long term.
You know, COVID's had a horrendous effect on Wyndham, you know, not unlike any other city in Australia. But with our workforce, you know, like 70% of the workforce travels outside the city. So it's been, I have no doubt, excruciating for people as well as the businesses. And it's certainly knocked a lot of businesses for six. Some, you know, will probably never recover. We've tried what we can do as a council, but we can only do so much. And I think from April last year to around about July, you know, we chuffed out about 30,000 meals. So we're actually, you know, providing meals for, you know, delivered meals and those vulnerable and all those sorts of things. And
COVID on Cardinia has had probably two stages to it. We had the first stage where we had a lot of residents who were getting either JobKeeper or JobSeeker. So therefore there wasn't quite as much financial hardship for our residents because they're not huge earners. So therefore by getting JobKeeper or JobSeeker, it was sort of helping them get by. I know some local businesses actually went quite well because people all of a sudden had some extra money and they were at home. So there were some businesses like mechanics and that, which actually could do services on cars and shared with me. It was quite good. Fish and chip shops, people were buying takeaway and that. Unfortunately, when the second round came, there was no job seeker, and no JobKeeper, and the job seeker was massively reduced and made it really hard. And for a lot of people, they just missed out totally, which made people terribly more stressful in the situation.
The growth is something that we've not ever experienced because we've been this wonderful rural town that's had 1,200 hectares rezoned with no facilities, no infrastructure, no employment lands, no recreation lands. So it's been something that's unprecedented with no template or structure. It's just happened and it's just been a huge opportunity for us to grow our town into an amazing city, but we need help. The growth that's happening right now in Mount Barker is quite amazing. We have 15 new developments going on as we speak.
Within the first 4 months of this year, we had a 91% increase in DAs within the Wallandilly area, and that's roughly about $173 million on the ground. Now, we are struggling as a council to actually keep up with the demand, but not only that, there are on-flow effects from the congestion that we're seeing within our local roads network, which can mean anywhere up to you need to leave an additional 45 minutes to get from one village to another village at the moment, because there has been a lag with infrastructure on the ground to alleviate those growth problems.
When I moved here in 1982, the population of Wyndham was around the vicinity of 48,000 people. And you could pretty much drive from where I lived in Wyndham Vale to the city in 15 minutes. And that was doing the right speed too. But since 1982, we've had exponential growth. Unfortunately, the infrastructure hasn't kept up to the level that's been needed as a growth council. And the projections are by 2041 that we'll have in excess of I think it's about 515,000, 520,000 people, we're growing somewhere in the vicinity of between 10 and 14,000 people a year. I hear that at the Werribee Mercy Hospital, there's 110 babies born every single week. So every single week, you know, after the babies are born, every 3 weeks there's a kinder, every 4 weeks there's a school. And you know, the growth that we've got last I was updated was that, you know, this 12 square kilometre growth front that's of construction that's going on in the city, and that's just the residential growth.
COVID has been a really interesting impact, can I say. The focus of the government, of course, was stimulating the housing sector, and it's seen some really positive economic benefits flowing through the COVID recovery. In fact, we have had to employ more contract staff at the city just to try and keep up with the sudden demand in, you know, the development applications that are coming through. The unintended impact, of course, then is the huge drive in first home buyers housing, which is prevalently in growth areas such as Kwinana. Kwinana is an outer metropolitan growth area whose population was already set to double by 2031. This was prior to the government stimulus announcement. So you look at I suppose the perfect storm. We've got already anticipated growth in an area of affordable housing, and then you couple that with the government stimulus, we continue to see new residents community will continue to grow and move into this region. So look, our local government will be faced with the challenges of serving our residents with, you know, appropriate community infrastructure, sports facilities, and local jobs being a key priority here. And whilst WA hasn't experienced some of the same challenges as the eastern states, the resulting drive for the suburban housing, escalating home prices and demand for local amenities will be felt long after the health impacts are managed by the government.
Home build has been a great success in Playford and has had a real stimulus here to our growth areas. So since June the 4th, 2020 to April 14, 2021, we've seen close to 1,300 applications for new dwellings in our growth areas, which, to put in context, in the previous time before that, we were sitting around 790. It's put huge pressure on our council's planning and development team, not just to assess applications, but also working with developers. We've had a number of developers that are selling land and house packages before the land's even been developed or even properly planned. So our staff are just run off their feet. It also means community infrastructure. So the parks, the gardens, the playing reserves, etc., have to be brought forward now. So our long-term planning also takes a hit from council because of limited developer contributions in South Australia. That means that adds more pressure to our rate base to bring about more facilities for fast-growing communities. I think the challenge for us is the continued urban growth. We've got a large number of new developments, and particularly with the Riverlea project, which will see 12,000 dwellings over the next 20 years built, and that's just one estate, let alone the dozens of others that are growing, between 500 and 3,000 or 4,000 lot developments. So keeping up with that, but also managing a traditional city, a city that was built in the late 1950s, early 60s, whose infrastructure is also coming to the end of its useful life. So how do you have two communities growing at different rates, but also needing infrastructure in their own unique way is the biggest challenge for Playford.
The growth areas haven't diminished in people moving into them because they're the most affordable areas around cities. And even though we mightn't have the migration in relation to people coming into the country at the moment, they are still very, very busy areas because people are looking for affordable living. And they need to continue to support those areas with growth because the growth is still happening. Houses are still being built everywhere because rents are getting so high in Melbourne, as an example, that people move out further. And they've worked out sometimes it's cheaper to buy a house yourself and pay it off than pay the rent.